record on this computer. We had 11 people this afternoon. It was the biggest class number of people that we've had for quite some time. But we have almost that number now.
Yeah, it's the closer we get to summer, it gets stays light later, and so then people kind of come in a little bit later. It's hard to you're doing stuff outside or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it's already 7 o'clock.
Exactly. They forget, or it's so nice and sunny. It was raining and I took the garbage out in the rain, and then it sunned up and said, hey, I would rather be out here. So we have another day, and we have another update on diabetes, second class. And so I see most of the faces that we recognize, and probably a few more people jump on there. It's starting like, okay, remember, now's the time. Well, we want to welcome everybody. And we're going to do the second session on diabetes today. And we're fortunate to have a couple that took one of my first classes that I gave in Roseburg many, many years ago. And they are going to kind of share their stories with you about diabetes. And I think you'll find that very interesting as we go along. But before we have them chime in, we're going to see if there's anybody who has any questions, comments, suggestions, either about last week or this week or anything in your life before we get started.
I tried to find last week's and it wasn't posted. You posted at the end of the month, or did I miss it?
No, it's there. Let me share my screen here real quick.
Oh,
I usually have it up by sometimes Wednesday night, but usually by Thursday. It's always on the website. So if you go to the homepage, the
okay.
most updated class, the most recent class is always right here below the website tutorial. This week's class recording, Diabetes Part 1, just right here.
Wait a minute. Okay. I was looking at the higher up
At the archived?
At the archives, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the archives has, you can go to that and you'll have the
yeah,
next, here's the classes for April, and then the most recent one is just on the homepage.
I didn't go down far enough, thanks. Okay, got it.
There we go, right there, yep.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
Thanks, Alice, for the question, because there may be others who have the same issues. Are there any other comments, suggestions, or anything that's going on in your brain? All right. Just because I want a couple more people to be able to log on and hear Stu and Sharon Stevens's journey toward health is what I think about it in my mind. I don't know what they think about in their mind. But I want to give them ample opportunity to talk with you all. But I also want to see if there's a few more people who might log on over the next 5 or 10 minutes. So I want to play 1 or 2 videos. It's kind of a summation, perhaps, of last week's session, some orientation about foods to eat, the best diet for diabetes, that sort of thing. It's like 10 minutes. I got a couple videos. At the end of those videos, then we're going to hear the story that Stu and Sharon and Stephen have to share with us. So people are still logging in right now. And so let me play 1 or 2 videos, and then we will be back in the room with you all. I hope you can see my screen. I suspect you can.
Yep.
And I'm going to play Plant-Based Diets Recognized first. It's a Greger video.
Dr.
Before I do that, I want to make sure that I click the right buttons here. I don't think I clicked the optimize. Yeah, I did. I'm getting used to this. Okay, here we go. One more time. Recognized. Plant-based diets recognized by the American Diabetes Association.
Dr. Kim Williams, immediate past president of the American College of Cardiology, started out an editorial on plant-based diets with the classic Schopenhauer quote that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as like, duh, of course. In 2013, plant-based diets for diabetes were in the ridiculed stage in the official endocrinology practice guidelines, placed in the fad diets section. They acknowledged strictly plant-based diets have been shown to reduce the risk for type 2 diabetes and improve management of diabetes better than the American Diabetes Association recommendations, but then inexplicably go on to say that the evidence doesn't support the use of one type of diet over another with respect to diabetes or in general. The best approach for a healthy lifestyle is simply the amelioration of unhealthy choices, whatever the heck that means. But by 2015, the clinical practice guidelines from the same professional associations explicitly endorsed as their general recommendation for diabetic patients a plant-based diet. Times they are a-changin'. The American Diabetes Association itself is also now on board, listing it as one of the dietary patterns acceptable for the management of the condition. But the Canadian Diabetes Association has really taken the lead. Type 2 diabetes is considered one of the fastest-growing diseases in Canada, representing a serious public health concern, so they're not messing around, recommending plant-based diets for disease management because of their potential to improve body weight and blood sugar control, as well as heart disease risk, in addition to reducing the need for diabetes medications. They use the Kaiser Permanente definition, a regimen that encourages whole plant-based foods and discourages meats, dairy, and eggs, as well as all refined and processed junk. They recommend diabetes education centers in Canada improve patients' perceptions of plant-based diets by developing educational materials and providing individualized counseling sessions to address what barriers people have to eating plant-based. The biggest barrier identified was ignorance. Nearly 9 out of 10 patients interviewed had never even heard of using a plant-based diet to treat diabetes. Why is that? Maybe patient awareness of the benefits are being influenced by the perception of the diabetes educators and clinicians. See, most of the staff were aware, yet only about 1 in 3 were currently recommending it. Why not? One of the common reasons given was that they didn't think their patients would do it, so they didn't even bring it up. But this notion is contrary to the patient survey results they cite, in which most patients said they would be willing to at least give it a try. The researchers cite the PCRM Geico studies I did videos about, in which strictly plant-based diets were well accepted, with an over 95% adherence rate, presumably because they just felt so much better, increased energy, better digestion, better sleep and satisfaction. A number of staff members also expressed their second reason for not recommending this diet, not being clear about the supportive scientific evidence, but has been shown to be more effective than an American Diabetes Association recommended diet at reducing the use of diabetes medication, long-term blood sugar control, and cholesterol. It's therefore possible that the diabetes educators were simply behind the times, as there's a lag time in dissemination of new scientific findings from the literature to the clinician and finally to the patient. That's one of the reasons I started nutritionfacts.org, to speed up the process. As Dr. Williams put it, the evidence for the benefits of plant-based nutrition continues to mount. This now includes lower rates of stroke, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, heart attacks, and cardiac death, as well as many non-cardiac issues that affect our patients in cardiology, ranging from cancer to a variety of inflammatory conditions. The science we got. The bigger challenge is overcoming the inertia, culture, and habit, and widespread marketing of unhealthy foods. He concludes, reading the existing scientific literature and evaluating the impact of plant-based nutrition clearly represents the single most important yet underutilized opportunity to reverse the pending obesity and diabetes-induced epidemic of disease and death.
The more I hear that video, the more I like it. It's really a good summation of, the resistance that has occurred toward, making a transition, why that's happening, and what we need to do to try to overcome it. Now, this last video I want to play, and then we'll get to the meat of the meeting, so to speak. Not really the meat, but whatever, the beans of the meeting, the rice, the potatoes, something like that. The plants of the meeting. The best diet for diabetes. Let's take a look at this.
There are all sorts of different scoring systems to rate diet quality. My favorite, for its simplicity, is the Dietary Phytochemical Index, a fancy name for a simple concept. It's just the percentage of your calories from whole plant foods, so 0 to 100. The average American diet has a score of 12 out of 100. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, our diet is a 1. You can split people up based on how they score and show how the higher you score, the better your metabolic markers when it comes to diabetes risk. There appears to be like this stepwise drop in insulin resistance and insulin-producing beta cell dysfunction as you eat more and more plant-based. And that highest group was only scoring about 30. Less than a third of their diet was whole plant foods, but better than the lowest, which was down around the standard American diet. No wonder. Diets centered around plants, emphasizing legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds, and discouraging most or all animal products, are especially potent in preventing type 2 diabetes, and as a little bonus, has been associated with much lower rates of obesity, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, cardiovascular mortality, and cancer. And not just preventing type 2 diabetes, but treating it as well. A systematic review and meta-analysis found that the consumption of vegetarian diets is associated with improved blood sugar control. But how much improved? Here's one of the latest trials. The effect of a strictly plant-based diet centered around brown rice, it was done in Asia, versus the conventional diabetic diet on blood sugar control of patients with type 2 diabetes, a 12-week randomized clinical trial. For the diabetic control diet, they set up food exchanges and calculated specific calorie and portion controls, whereas on the plant-based diet, people could eat as much as they want. That's one of the benefits. The emphasis is on food quality rather than quantity, and they still actually lost more weight. But even after controlling for the greater abdominal fat loss in the plant-based group, they still won out. Of course, it only works if you actually do it, but those that pretty much stuck to the healthier diet dropped their A1C levels 0.9%, which is what you get taking the leading diabetes drug, but of course only with good side effects. Yeah, but would it work in an underserved population? The impact of a plant-based diet support program on mitigating type 2 diabetes in San Bernardino, the poorest city of its size in California. A randomized controlled trial, but not of a plant-based diet itself, as the title suggests, but of just an education program telling people about the benefits of a plant-based diet for diabetes, and then it was up to them. And still got a significant improvement in blood sugar control. Here are the numbers. Got a little better in the control group, but way better in the plant-based instruction and support group. And more plant-based diets are not just effective in the prevention and management of diabetes, but also its complications. Check this out. One of the most devastating complications of diabetes is kidney failure. This shows the decline in kidney function in 8 diabetics in the 1 or 2 years before switching their diets. They all showed this steady, inexorable decline on a fast track to complete kidney failure, and dialysis. But then they switched to a special supplemented vegan diet, and their kidney decline was stopped in its tracks. Imagine if they had switched a year or two earlier. Most diabetics don't actually end up on dialysis, though, because they die first. Cardiovascular disease is the major cause of premature mortality among diabetics. That's why plant-based diets are perfect. There's a general scientific consensus that the elements of a whole food plant-based diet, legumes, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts with limited or no intake of processed foods and animal products, are highly beneficial for preventing and treating type 2 diabetes. Equally important, plant-based diets address the bigger picture by simultaneously treating cardiovascular disease, our #1 killer, along with obesity, high blood pressure, lowering inflammation, and we can throw cancer into the mix too, our #2 killer. The bottom line is that the case for using a plant-based diet to reduce the burden of diabetes and improve overall health has never been stronger.
Okay, I'm done sharing, and we've gone up from about 11 people to 29 by just kind of dragging our feet a little bit and allowing a little bit of time for others to log in. There may be still a couple more who log on, but we're not going to wait forever because I'm excited really to share with you or have Stu and Sharon Stevens share their story with you. I guess I don't want to do any spoiler alerts about what happened. I'm going to give them time to spend as long as they like and allow you to question whatever you'd like. And we can sum up, and hopefully we'll have a little discussion session. And if it goes more quickly, I've got plenty more videos, as you all are aware. It just seems like they are never ending in this world. And anyway, it's really good to see both of you, Stu and Sharon. Does my heart good to see you after all these years, still coming, still teaching. Totally amazing. And thank you for making it to this meeting. You know, I know you had to drive a little bit or whatever you have to do. So lead on. Just unmute. Yeah, you're unmuted, Sharon.
All right. Thank you both Charlie and Scott for inviting us. So we're always thrilled to come and hear this. We do have a little trouble getting to Wi-Fi. We did drive here just like 5 minutes from our RV, and we were in a little green Ranger, a little green Gator, because we are the campground host at a very lovely campground in the San Juan Islands on Lopez Island. So that's kind of what we do. We've been full-time RVers since 2016, November of 2016. But what I'll do is just introduce us, and then the context of what we'll tell you is that way back in 2015, Stu was retired, I was working. I had moved us down to Roseburg, Oregon as a better quality of life place for us to be, especially for him to be in retirement, moved down from Seattle. And I had been ignoring my own health, knowing that I was gaining weight at my job. I was knew that I'd had high cholesterol since my early 30s, because I was a cardiovascular educator and specialist. So I had lots of opportunities to have blood drawn. I also knew that I had pre-diabetes. So kind of in my mind, I kind of knew my health wasn't the best. And since I'm a health professional, I knew it, just kind of ignoring it, working hard, taking care of patients. So we moved down from Seattle to Roseburg to start a job at the VA there. And I needed to have a health physical to know if I could even start the job. And on my physical, my blood pressure was off the charts. And so I was really concerned that I wouldn't even get this job that we were now dependent on, because we're focused on my health right now, is that I might have had just too many risk factors or would have had to go on medicine, that sort of thing. So I was ripe for change myself at that time. So we were new in town. We start to get the newspaper, and lo and behold, there's this ad for healthy lifestyle, healthy living diet that says that Dr. Charles Ross is teaching this class. And so I started to work on Stu, and he'll tell you more about his health, but I was also worried about him. But at that moment, I was starting to get more worried about myself, knowing that I had a very positive cardiac history in my own family. So I worked on him to attend this class. We even that day, I told him if he would just please go to this class with me, that then we could go to the fish ladder and go look at the fish. And so he begrudgingly went to this class where we first met Charlie, and it was in probably the middle to the late January, 9.5 years ago that we met. So from there, I'll let Stu take over talking about diabetes. I mentioned I have pre-diabetes by numbers that I had. So, but for him, the story's kind of this week on diabetes. So we'll let him take over on his story.
And nice to see everybody, and love being here again. I was actually thinking earlier tonight about, it's been a little while since we've spoken with the class, and we are, after 9 years plus, we're at the point now where we don't think about it anymore. It's our lifestyle. So it's kind of like, well, oh yeah, let's see. Oh, that's right. There was a reason that we're doing what we're doing now and why we stayed with it. And that's a really good feeling. It's a really good feeling. And I'll kind of explain my whole situation. But to start with, I have diabetes, and I have type 1 diabetes. So majority of the people have type 2, but there's about a 5% of the population. And back in the old days, they used to call it juvenile diabetes because it was only children that would get that type. Now it's type 1 and type 2. And so at the age of 12 and around 1971, I developed this. And there was a little history in my family. So when I had the symptoms of unquestionable thirst and urination, like at school, I can remember just going between classes every 45 minutes and downing a bunch of water and then going to the bathroom, and that's all I had time to do between classes. So I was tested and I had type 1. Now this is 1971, and if you go back and look, and I can remember my country physician talking to my parents and telling them at that point in time, life expectancy was about 15 to 20 years. And as a 12-year-old, I overheard this, my mom and my parents are very upset. And so I'm thinking right off the bat, my life expectancy is quite short. And sure enough, we've actually had a lot of friends that along the way that have had type 1 diabetes, and they're not with us anymore. They actually did follow those trends. Luckily, I did okay. So I went into healthcare also as a respiratory therapist. And so I think that might have helped a little bit. But I was at the time doing really good with following the American Diabetes Association, kind of what to eat there. And at that time, it was like really low carbs, high protein, fat didn't even come into the equation. So what's high protein? It was meat. And so very few vegetables and almost no fruit. And so I lived like that for a long, long time. But I was developing those complications that people with long-term diabetes develop. Some eye retinopathy, I was having some I was having some bones that weren't healing in my feet, so kind of some peripheral neuropathy, high blood pressure, high cholesterol because of my diet, which I didn't know that at the time. I ended up on statin medication and 3 different blood pressure medications.
And that was at the age of 30.
Yeah.
In his 30s, he was actually taken care of by an endocrinologist out of Stanford who had just heard about ACE inhibitors, and she had done research on them. So she put him on ACE inhibitors
Really early, yeah.
really early. So, and statins to make sure he had all the best of what was offered for medical care. And his retinopathy was in his 30s, where
Yeah.
he had to have laser surgery for preventing blindness.
So,
It's kind of why we got him retired early too, at age 50.
56. So I
56.
retired at 56 because I wanted a little retirement. At the time, I'm like, I'm just going on borrowed time right now. So, we just decided that I would retire early. And so when I had the opportunity, I did that. Now, one thing is I loved eating the way I was eating back in those days. So, meat and potatoes and very
Lots
few
of-
potatoes.
Lots of bacon,
Lots of bacon.
a side of bacon with your bacon and waffle.
Yeah. So, but again, experiencing all the side effects of that. So, and Sharon, was way ahead of the scale as far as knowing what a plant-based diet would do for you. And I really wasn't, because I'm doing what the American Diabetes Association tells you to do. I'm just trying to follow suit here. And so that time when we went and saw Charlie for the first time, and pretty packed house.
Well, they were small classes then.
Small classes back
like
in those days.
16, but the nursing students showed up in the
Yeah,
back.
that's what it was. Nursing students came in. It was like it was your lunch break, I think. You would do them on your lunch break. And anyway, Charlie starts putting up data just like he's doing right now. So Gregor, Bernard, and all these guys that have kind of done work with diabetes and just plant-based stuff. And, we kind of thought about that, and it was like, well, let's give it a try for a month and, see what happens. And so,
And he wanted to go back to that second class. I had to drag him to the first class, but he actually really wanted to go to the second class.
And Sharon was working at the time, and they were mostly at lunchtime. So I would just come down, and you had some great people and some great stories, Tom, and all those people that had just wonderful results from from what they were doing. And so I'm just listening, but it wasn't diabetes. Theirs was like some cardiac issues and some stroke issues and those kind of things. It's like, well, that's cool that it helps them do that. Maybe that could help some of my risk factors on that. So we went ahead and we decided to do it. And luckily it was just Sharon and I. We didn't have our kids were all grown then. And so we just went in and cleaned out the fridge and started on this journey. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but it happened immediately. So within 24 hours of eating plants instead of high-fat protein kind of things, my blood sugars were plummeting. So I always equate type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is like a manual transmission, and type 2 is kind of like an automatic transmission. Your pancreas is still working and shifting gears, but I have to do it all myself. So I have to check my blood sugar. I have to know what I eat take that amount of insulin. I'm always going to have to do that, and I'm still doing that today. But what happened is the amount of insulin that I was taking within about a month, that month that we were given at this trial, dropped by about
2/3.
2/3. So all of a sudden, I thought I was taking a normal amount of insulin, but I was not. And so what we've kind of figured out since then is not only did I have type 1 diabetes, but I also had type 2.
Or
I-
insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance, the insulin resistant type 2 diabetes. And so by cutting that out, it was a little scary for me. And I know when I would talk to classes after that, it's like, if you're going to do this, even with type 2, you need to journal this. You need to be writing your blood sugars down, writing down what you eat, because when you show your doctor, they're not going to believe it. And you need to show them so that they will be cutting your insulin down. Now, I had enough background that I was able to do that on my own, thank goodness, because I think it would have been scarier. I probably would have ended up in the hospital if I hadn't have been cutting my insulin back. And I was just cutting back, 2 or 3 units at a time when I should have been halving it, at least by a quarter at a time. So it was kind of scary low there for a long time.
It was very scary for us because I had taken 3 months off between jobs. So we started on Fat Tuesday. We took a couple weeks and said, okay, we're going to do this. And I didn't start working where my insurance was going to kick in until about March 15th, right? Shortly after that. So we are not working. We're relying on a COBRA plan that we haven't really bought unless we need it. And so no insurance, basically, no real, we didn't have a physician supervising us other than, it wasn't like we had a primary care physician, although we adopted Charlie very quickly. So
It's like, what should I do? Help me out here.
Back in 2015, we were very scared about what we were doing to our bodies because there wasn't nearly as much research out there. There was some, but not like there is today. Just very scary. And then your blood pressure, you started to have blood pressure trouble too.
Yep. So I'm like dizzy, if I squat down and stand up, I'm almost passing out. And so started cutting back on some blood pressure medications. And within quick, probably within 2 months, I was off all 3 blood pressure medications.
Off statin.
I went off my statin just listening to hear what was going to happen. And when I finally did have one drawn, like 3 months later, it was all normal, like subnormal. It was like better than anybody's. It was like, how can that be? I was like, so it was all very, very exciting. And then over about a 6-month period, so guess what? We kept doing it. That month came and went. And we didn't go, okay, I've had enough of that. No, it was like all those symptoms that I had been experiencing kind of 1 month at a time, they were just going away. I know Charlie would laugh when he would hear me talk at the class because I'm like, oh yeah. And it was my feet kind of, I don't have the pain in my feet that I used to have. And I don't have high blood pressure anymore. And my cholesterol is low normal. And
your vision was getting better.
My vision actually was getting better. And my ability, my clarity of thought, it's amazing how it kind of cleared up. And even today, it's like, my memory's better, believe it or not. Maybe not that good to start with, but it's better. I can remember numbers now, and it's like, it's really, really amazing.
Energy.
And the energy part, like we're camp hosts. So today I weed eated probably a half a mile of road and then blew it off with a gas-powered leaf blower
On your back.
on my back, and I'm hiking up and down. This is kind of on a hill, and we're checking everything out. And I have absolutely no problems. It's like, it feels good to do that. So work and stamina and all that is just incredible for me.
You've had diabetes for 53
53 years now.
years.
Yeah. Now, again, I will always have to take insulin. I'll always have to check my blood sugar, but technology has come along. And so now I wear a continuous glucose monitor that is tied in with my insulin pump, which has an AI component to it. So I don't even adjust my basal insulin anymore. It does it. And it keeps my blood sugars amazingly within range. It's quite spectacular, the technology and everything that's coming along. Pretty soon we'll be calling them artificial pancreas. You won't even have to count what you're eating. The machine will do it for you. It's really, really close.
And you've just been on the pump for 1 week. So we
Yeah,
just
it's
got it
new.
a week ago, last Tuesday.
It's new, and it's pretty impressive piece of technology.
Could you share the numbers that you were just before the pump and just after, like you did in the email with me?
The first 72 hours.
Yeah, so when you look at glucose monitoring, it'll put it in, you tell it like what range you want to be in. So like a normal person's range would be like between 80 and 120. And that's kind of where they stay. Someone with
Blood sugars.
diabetes, if I can stay within 70 and 150, I feel that's pretty good. And so what it does is it does a percentage of time in a 24-hour period, how long you're in that. And gosh, for years, I would be about 75% of the time where I should be. But 25% of the time, I'm having some lows and I'm having some highs. And the first week of being on this pump, I'm 98% of the time in range. And
That's
not,
amazing.
it is. It's totally
Mhm.
amazing. It's almost hard to believe, but it's kind of almost hard to believe, like starting a plant-based diet was hard to believe at the time. But once you're doing it, it's totally
And as far
impressive.
as numbers, like his blood pressure with medication, with 3 medications, would run like 140/90. His diastolic was typically high. It was always above 85 and usually 90, 92. That was with 3 medicines. And then like for 3 years in a row, we've got blood pressures for him like 125/72. Just no medicine. Hasn't had medicine for 9 years, almost 9.5 years. As far as you probably talk more in A1C, so we've always done hemoglobin A1C, and his, like, there were years when his stress level was up. Let's say when I was going back and commuting to Salt Lake City, giving my PhD, and he was like commuting to help with the young girls and that sort of thing. His hemoglobin A1C would run about 8. And that was usually his highest weight as well.
Right.
Since plant-based diet, it's been really interesting. It usually ran as high as like 7.6, but then in the last 2 years, it's been like 7.0, 7.0. And he's got friends on the pump that they're in the 5s. His hemoglobin A1C, when we got back from Mexico, because part of our full-time RV lifestyle is we go to Mexico every winter. We have so for the last 7 years. We got back from Mexico this year and you were 6.5. So, it just keeps getting better the longer we do this. And wouldn't be surprising with the addition of the pump that he could be in the 5s. But definitely
I can see it. I
6.5.
didn't believe those people when they were telling me that, because a lot of them have had diabetes as long as I have. I worked at a camp for children with diabetes. I went to one in Oregon as a camper and then as a counselor. And believe it or not, that's where I met this lovely nurse. She was the camp nurse at this camp, and I was the counselor at the time. I wasn't a camper. I was actually like, we were both in college at that point. But they actually, yeah, they've been on pumps longer than I have, and they've had those amazing numbers. So that part of technology is quite spectacular.
So just as far as how we do it, nuts and bolts, as far as we travel all the time. We live in a little RV. We went from a 23-foot to a 33-foot, so we have more space. And with more space, when we came to Lopez Island, we stocked up. We bought a bunch of big bags of like whole or what I want to say, the steel cut oats. We bought like 25 pounds of steel cut oats, organic. We bought 25 pounds of garbanzo beans, organic. The things that we eat a lot of, we buy organic because we consume a lot of it. Pinto beans, 25 pounds, black beans, 25 pounds. So we come over with a bunch of beans and grains.
And rolled oats.
And rolled oats, 25 pounds. Did we get them?
Mhm.
25 pounds of, so we get a whole bunch of quantity of whole food. And then we brought over a whole bunch of, just because on the island things are, you can get them, but they're more expensive. But we really stocked up on things like apples and oranges and soy milk. We mostly do soy milk these days. And then frozen berries, lots and lots of frozen
Fill the freezer,
blueberries
yep.
and
Mixed
we also
berry.
have been doing the organic mixed berries as well. So we usually will go to something like Grocery Outlet first and just stock up. And then we typically have like 6 mornings a week. We have our steel cut oats cooked in our pressure cooker with, we like to add flax seeds and then also put the berries on them in our soy milk. And that like holds us over. And then lunch is light. Like lunch, typically Stu will have an apple. He'll have a large apple for lunch if he's not really that hungry because he's still full from his breakfast. And then we'll work lots of bowls, salads, soups. Today he had made, that's why we're running a little late, he had made a split pea soup with some potatoes in it. And it's, you know, pressure cooker. We use the pressure cooker every day. We've already used the pressure cooker today 3 times. We made steel cut oats in the morning. We made garbanzo beans. And that's what we'll snack on. You know, like if we're a little hungry as like the soup is cooking, we'll snack on some garbanzo beans as we're waiting for our dinner.
Just cook garbanzo beans. They don't have anything on them. They're just the peas themselves. Yeah. We've kind of gotten, again, that's that your whole taste kind of changes. I love them. They're like, you know, they're definitely a snack, but they're pretty healthy, I think.
So typically a big salad at night, most nights, just a big salad, homemade salad dressings. We got away from buying any kind of salad dressings. So we have a few recipes that we make, homemade salad dressings, homemade hummus. Travel, you know, when we're going from place to place. So we'll get in the car, like Saturday, we got in the car and we needed to go to a celebration of life in Bellevue. And so our typical travel food is bags of cut up vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, and hummus. You know, that's in the car, that and water. Since we were both big coffee drinkers, and I had gone to, we've done all the like meetings, you know, we've done, you know, a lot of like Veg Fest and seen all the speakers. We just got done watching the Food Revolution. So we always kind of keep up with what's going on there. I went to a meeting in Cleveland that was the Health Association meeting. We're like, trying to think of the typical speakers, but Chef AJ was there and Kathy Furman was there. Goldhammer, the True North folks were there. But I decided, so it was a meeting at a hotel that we were with these former hygienists, right, from the hygienist air, the people that are like started this way before we even thought about plant-based eating. And so they had no coffee. You know, there was no caffeine in that hotel, like unless you snuck over to the bar, could you get some coffee? They did not serve coffee at the meeting. So I was definitely kind of feeling like I still need my coffee at that meeting. So I would sneak over to the bar and get a cup of coffee. But I decided at that meeting that I was going to taper and get off of it. And that was about 5 years ago, I think. And I just decided for me, even though I know there's some research that caffeine has some positive effect, for me, I was like always on edge, and I would have a short fuse and get irritable, and I wasn't sleeping great. And I thought, why am I drinking coffee when also incontinence? I do notice now if I add any kind of caffeine, I have like a little stress incontinence, like, I mean, just predictable in the next, 28, 48 hours. If I happen to get caffeinated tea or caffeine that I wasn't expecting I was going to have, it's like, oh, what's that about? Caffeine. So as far as health, and then Stu just followed suit when we went to Mexico. He just was like, well, it's hot, I'm not going to drink coffee. So he hasn't drank coffee. So just kind of how gradually we've changed our eating. So it's pretty pure, drink water. Since the last probably year and a half, if his blood sugars get low, he's gone so dates is a big part, and some juices. We're so remote, we've started to keep a juice, a box of juice, so that we can get a liquid sugar in him if he's low. But we're hoping with the pump a lot fewer low blood sugars.
Already, yeah.
Yeah.
It's already happened that way.
But dates, he's a
Dates.
big, we've always got a lot of dates, and if his blood sugar is running low,
I kind of
he
think
treats with dates.
I used, like, you should just eat sugar, raw sugar. But it's like, well, if I eat a date, I'm going to get the sugar, plus I'm going to get a whole bunch of micronutrients and everything that goes along with that.
Fiber.
And fiber. And it's like, that just made more sense to me.
What did you used to treat low blood sugars with?
Well, back in the old days, it was like a Snickers bar.
Always a Snickers bar.
So, which now it makes no sense because it's half fat, and it probably took a lot longer for it to actually work to bring your blood sugar up. But I liked them back in the days.
So I want to interrupt you too for just a moment. I want to give the class an opportunity to see if there are any questions from anybody. They may want to give some input. Maybe you have someone, and then we're going to get back with you to finish off a bit more. So is there anybody who has any questions or any thoughts or comments about what you've heard so far tonight? And I'm kind of looking around the room. You could either raise your hand. I'll look and see if I can see you. And if we can't, you can, there is Trouty. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was wondering, what kind of water do they drink? Is it distilled water or spring water, or what kind of water?
Ideally, we would love, the purest of water, but because we travel and like right now we're on Lopez Island and our water is what is here. We do not bring any special water. We don't have any special thing other than a Brita.
Yeah, we
filter our water with a Brita, and we filter the water that comes into our RV. So we have a double filter process, but our water is not great here. It's a hard water. It turns our glass tea kettle white. There's a lot of minerals. Not crazy about our water here. But so normally we drink, we don't really like to drink water out of plastic bottles. So in the summer, we go to Idaho and we live on a piece of property that just has electricity, but it has no water. We pull in and we do have an outhouse and we bring all our water in. So we drink the city water from the little town, but we bring it in jugs, you know, in like the plastic blue jugs. So, you know, not that I like to have water that's been in a plastic jug, but we fill a jug and we bring all our water in. So we live very, very simple for 3 to 4 months, where we're using an outhouse. We use at night, we use our RV. We try not to use it because we have to like drive it off and go dump.
It's a dump.
And we have to bring all our water in. But, you know, we feel like it's simple. We can live very economically. We work, you know, as in we're mowing the lawn and taking care of property, and we walk, that sort of thing. So we get good exercise. We have a very low thumbprint, which I didn't used to think of that when we started this, but we feel like our eating gives us a nice low thumbprint. And then the summer gives us a good low thumbprint. And it supports why we can go to Mexico for 3 months in the winter, is by living so very frugally in the summer.
Now, Stu, in other sessions, I've heard you talk about how you used to live your life. And you might share that if you care to, as to how your thought process has changed a bit.
Yes, well, it's definitely has changed. And in fact, I think I was telling you early on, it's like that used to be forward in my mind, and now I don't really think about that anymore. But, you know, I retired early because I knew I wasn't going to have a long life. So basically, I was setting myself up for, you know, disability and death, early death. So that
Blindness.
was kind of all those things. I was just waiting for those to happen, and I could feel them slowly starting to happen. And that was kind of my life then. So after switching to a plant-based diet, and after doing it for several years, now we're up at 9 years, I feel like now I'm living to live. So the things that we do are to experience new experiences, and just that outlook. I don't think about death anymore as something that's going to come early. In fact, now I'm planning what I'm going to be doing when I'm 85 and maybe 90. You know, it's like, I think, you know,
Both your parents lived to 95.
they did. So I had some good genetics that way, but they didn't live well their last, 15 years. They kind of standard American diet. So they were going through all the strokes and dementia and heart problems and broken bones. So we were kind of watching that, and that doesn't look like a whole lot of fun. But now I have this feeling that we're not going to have to do that. And again, now after doing it for almost 10 years, I've almost kind of stopped thinking about that anymore. That's not even in my thought process unless I'm telling somebody about it and how that has changed my life. Because, when anybody asks what going to this, I say it actually saved my life. It saved my life.
Yeah. And it was very front and center that he was going to die early. I mean, we would go to his doctor in the 30s and say, we want to do advanced directives. He doesn't want dialysis. We want to, start doing advanced directives. And they would just look at us and say, what do you mean? You're in your 30s. It's like, no, he worked in an ICU. He knew he didn't want to be on dialysis, and he was making that decision early. That was like so long ago. And we would go to our financial planner and we would say, okay, we need to plan for just me. Stu won't be here. And they would be like, what? And it's like, no, Stu's not going to be there. I mean, we spent our younger life preparing that he would never make it to 65. And now it's our biggest joke, and we just joke continuously about like, looks like, you're gonna be here
Yeah,
like another,
a little bit longer.
we're always like protecting,
When I met her, I wasn't going to have children. I didn't want to have children that might have diabetes.
He didn't want to get married.
Didn't want to get married.
I had to ask him to marry me.
And then I have two wonderful daughters. In fact, one of them just had their 40th birthday. So I didn't think I would see them graduate from high school or college, have wonderful jobs. I have a granddaughter. It's like bonus. Everything that happens now is like bonus. And thanks, Charlie.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with the class. That's, it's always been impactful and inspiring to me to listen to both of you and your story. And I know, Sharon, you've had some tremendous benefits in your own health also along the way. But again, I want to make sure that the class members get an opportunity to see if they have any more questions. So I'm going to kind of open it up and say one more time. Anybody in the gallery have any question? Anne, go ahead and unmute first.
Okay, hi. So I was diagnosed with type 1.5 a couple years ago. I'm 75. So at 73, I was diagnosed with this. My brother's had type 1 since he was 30. And I was sort of a vegetarian. I called myself a vegetarian because I eat a lot of fish, but I've been on the plant-based diet for a little over a year now. And the first year went really smooth and my A1Cs were really low and everybody said how great I was doing. And the last 3 or 4 months, I've just been bouncing all over. I've had, some really, and it seems like I was trying to follow the guidelines in the Mastering Diabetes book, but it just started feeling too tight. I just couldn't fit myself in that. But I could fit myself in a plant-based diet really easily. I mean, I could follow the guidelines there. But I always felt like I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And I still don't. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but my A1Cs are beginning to creep up. And is it because I'm losing my insulin? And I'm not on insulin. I'm on metformin, and my endocrinologist put me on another pioglitazone to see if it would help. And so I'm just feeling like, well, this isn't, and my energy's been low and my brain's foggy, and I'm going, okay, so it's not just plant-based diet. What do I need to do? And there's that sort of fear of like, well, when is it gonna, when am I gonna cross that line and have to start doing insulin? And anyway, all that. I wish I had a glow.
I'd like to jump in a moment and ask
Yes.
you, is this plant-based diet that you're talking about that you've been doing, is it totally whole food plant-based, or is it
Yeah.
processed, somewhat processed?
No. Well, the most processed thing I have is the sprouted wheat bread, or occasionally corn chips, like something like
Okay,
that.
and so what would you have to say about that, Stu and Sharon?
You should talk about your brother too.
Yeah, my brother just developed, he had what we thought, he's 75 now, and just a few years ago, he kind of type 2, he said, okay, I have type 2, and then it became 1.5, and they actually tested him. They can kind of do a test to see if your pancreas is actually putting out any insulin.
Right.
And his stopped. Yeah, he developed type 1 at age 72. So it wasn't, some of that is not just what you eat. And he's not a plant-based eater. He's definitely has the higher fat kind of thing. And, that's the thing I have to tell people to really watch. And the literature is kind of there. Bernard's done a lot of really good information with, the amount of fat in your diet. And so you kind of have to look at everything that you're eating And because I'm kind of on that manual curve, sometimes when we go to Mexico and we ate out and we'll try to get whole beans but they'll cook it in some olive oil or something. And that next day I can see my blood sugar go up. So it's like I actually can watch my fat. If I eat a little more fat in my diet, my insulin just requirements go right up. So that insulin sensitivity just takes very little time. And then if I stop, it goes right back down. So I can just do this manual gauge and watch it happen to myself. And it's harder when you have type 2 because your pancreas is attempting to put out some insulin the best it can. But that's what I would be looking at.
And he even, he still has days where he bounces, we just had this week of amazement, but yeah, you have times where you're just bouncing. It seems like it's always like a moving day or something where we really have stuff going on, but he'll have a reaction when he's not expecting one, and then he's going up, and he has wide excursions in his sugar, even though we're doing the same with our food.
Exercise, in type 1, there's this triangle of, insulin, exercise, and food. And so if you kind of keep 2 the same, but then you change 1, it's going to change everything. You don't eat as much, but you take the same amount of insulin, it's going to affect that. If you take the same amount of insulin, eat the same, but then you exercise more, your insulin receptors are more sensitive, and that changes things. So you always kind of look at that little triangle and see what's different within that.
Yeah,
And
it's
do
good
you
to
have a monitor at all oh, I'm sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention it's really important for Anne to make sure that she has a definitive diagnosis of type 1.5. So, if her fasting C-peptide is less than 0.2, and then maybe test positive for one of the antibodies. But if your C-peptide is that low, then you pretty much, the only way to get your blood sugars closer to normal is to go on insulin. So.
Yeah, my C-peptide went from 0.8 to 0.7 the last time it was tested. So that's right below the normal range. And I do have the antibodies, the GATA or GABA or something.
Yeah.
I was pretty high on those.
Yeah,
So
usually if you drop below 1.5 on your C-peptide, that's usually a sign you're going to need to go on insulin.
Yeah. So that's just kind of eerie for me, like I'm just sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop or something. And I don't know.
His brother, we were so worried that, when he was diagnosed wrong, basically, we thought he had cancer. I mean, he was getting so thin, and it wasn't anything diet related, because like we said, he didn't do plant-based, but he just was misdiagnosed for a couple years. He was on metformin, and then when he was finally diagnosed correctly, he did go on insulin, and he got a pump pretty quickly. But he's doing so well, and it doesn't seem to, I'm sure there was a big hesitation for him to go on insulin, but he's got a grandson also. Stu's got a nephew, a great nephew that has type 1 since age 6, I think. So, at least it was in his family. He'd been around his grandson, so he had a lot of familiarity. But I don't think there was any time that he wanted to go on insulin. But boy, he's so much healthier now that he is on insulin.
Yeah, sometimes I think it might be easier, because it's that sort of uncertainty is a little jarring.
And then a lot of it is a lot of the medications that we use for diabetes, they won't work very well. If you're not producing your own insulin, then they aren't really going to work very well. So so that's kind of dependent on that, some of the medications. So just something to consider. But yeah, it might be less what you're eating. Of course, you can fine tune, like you were saying, that following Mastering Diabetes regimen was a little bit hard for you, which they really restrict the plant fats too, because like Stu said, it can, even the olive oil and even avocados
Yeah,
and nuts might your sugar up.
I've dropped the oils, I mean, I'd say 98% of the time I leave them out. I've dropped salt, I mean, it's big, I keep dropping things and going, well, come on.
Doing it right.
Yeah. And the exercise makes a difference. It's true. I was like doing more exercise for a while, and the winter really hit me hard, and it was hard to keep that up quite as much.
Yeah, my pre-diabetes came back on the plant-based diet. It came back, where my numbers were coming up, my hemoglobin A1C. And so what I noticed is exercise for me.
Yeah.
If I wasn't regularly getting good walking exercise, that, and then, I think when it first happened, we had not yet stepped into SOS free. We didn't really do SOS free, the salt, sugar, oil free, that everybody kind of learns that early on, but we really didn't learn that until, we kind of heard about it, but we didn't implement it till 2 years into what we were doing, that we really went strict SOS free, no salt in the cooking, avoiding salty foods, no oil. And we were always, because of the diabetes, we were very low on oil, but and even like the sugar in bread, when we found, we both love bread, but if we just eliminate breads, that's very helpful. Even the whole grain breads for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yeah,
always
that's-
a fair amount of oil in the processed breads.
Mhm.
So we just don't have it. We don't have it in the RV. So when we get hungry and we start looking around, it's like an apple or an orange
Or garbanzo beans.
or garbanzo beans. That's right. We eat a lot of beans, like the pinto beans. I mean, we always have some beans in the fridge to heat up. We do get a lot of beans. The other thing too, and this is what we don't do, that I would think there's two things that we could do better. And one is more vegetables for breakfast and on a daily basis. We do it occasionally, maybe 2 times a week. And I like it when we do it. But I think more vegetables for breakfast. And then we always have to think about our eating window, because sometimes with our camp posting, we're selling wood till like 8 o'clock, and we might not start our dinner till late, and we have sometimes our dinner too late. And so having our dinner earlier and then not eating after dinner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why it is a journey. We are
Yeah.
always
Fine tuning.
always fine tuning. Yes.
Always some new research coming out. You always want to pay attention to that.
Did you guys see the study published by Hanna Kaliova from Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine? It just came out a couple weeks ago, and
No.
it was a randomized controlled trial. It was on 58 patients with type 1 diabetes, and so they put them on a low-fat vegan diet, whole food plant-based diet, and after 12 weeks, they had a 28% reduction in insulin requirements in just 12 weeks, and then a 127% increase in insulin sensitivity. And so and that was all 58 patients with type 1 diabetes. So it was pretty impressive. And that was published.
I think I heard her talking, because we hear her as a speaker quite a bit. And I think she revealed that data once, before it was actually published. So, because I had heard her talk about that, but we'll have to get the article.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I want to comment about the chat room about someone said that Jerusalem artichokes have insulin, and someone else commented that's inulin. Inulin is a fiber, and it's inulin in Jerusalem artichokes. And even if they had insulin in them, if you ate that insulin, it would be broken down in the stomach, so you wouldn't be able to use it. So that's why insulin needs to be injected. Any other questions? Any other thoughts from anyone? I'm gonna go back to the gallery and see if there's anybody else who has anything they care to bring up or share.
Alice here, like, wow, very compelling. I guess one of my thoughts was, with all the travel, you know, you say you're going to the celebration of life. How do you not cheat?
So I guess cheating for us would be eating out. And one of the things we have committed to do is if there is someone that starts, you know, or maintains a plant-based restaurant in particular, or a vegan restaurant, we do look to support those. So we eat out very seldom, but like we did on driving down, we were worried that when we got there at 1, that they wouldn't really have food that we could eat. So we stopped. We were going to Bellevue. We stopped in Kirkland because there was a vegan Asian restaurant. You know, it was vegan. Like a lot of, you know, if you're eating out, a lot of times you can go to an Asian restaurant of some sort and you can make some pretty good selection. But we thought, you know, we want to support any business that is trying to make it so that the public can eat vegan. So we stopped at that restaurant, but then we definitely pay sometimes that you're going to need more insulin that way. So as far as cheating, you know, that's one thing. It's just eating out, but we're ordering the healthiest thing that we can on a menu.
Yeah, the cheating part's kind of in our past.
Yeah.
You know, there was probably the first 3 or 4 or 5 years, every once in a while you would get a craving for something that would come back and haunt you. But again, after a period of time, Charlie probably can say that too, but after a period of time, it's like, it's just not part of your lifestyle any longer. It's not even, we just don't think about that anymore. You know, we go into a grocery store and it's like, okay, 5% of the food in this grocery store we can eat. The other 95% is
processed.
It's just not worth it. So, you know, we just go for that, and it seems to work. Again,
it really is a mindset. And you know, for those of us who are lucky enough to develop that mindset, it makes it easier. And if you don't have medical conditions that require you to take a lot of medicine or you know, that interfere with your life, to eat some foods that are off the menu, so to speak. Using the word cheat, I don't really like that, because it really has a lot of negative connotations, and it's just beating up on yourself, and we don't want anybody to have to do that.
The celebration of life that we went to, it was pretty amazing. I just dropped off a thank you for our host, but the celebration of life was the mother of the people we've talked to Charlie about before, and they've even tuned in, but it's our friends that were the sailors who have taken us on their sailboat like 9 times, and the other friends that we dog sit for. And these are the friends we met at the lighthouse 6 months after we went whole food plant-based, and Stu offered to cook the whole 7 days, where he was going to do all the cooking and it would be 100% plant-based whole food. So we did that, and all 4 of those ladies have been whole food plant-based since that time. So the celebration of life when we got there, we didn't think there'd be anything. They had all of this vegan, food that was, they had fruit trays
Fruit
and veggie
trays,
trays, and then they had the
hummus.
charcuterie boards, which I can't pronounce, the charcuterie board, and it was a completely vegan charcuterie board. And then they said, did you see the cupcakes? So normally we're not going after cupcakes, and it's like we just look at them and say they're pretty, and they go, oh, she got vegan cupcakes because she knew, that
That
we
we
would
were
be
coming.
coming. So it's just interesting how much change we've seen. We were shocked that at this big affair that 75 people were there, and that 6 of us were, identified as whole food plant-based, or if you're looking at a restaurant, they'll say vegan, a menu type.
And they bought food for us. It was there. We weren't expecting it, but
Yeah.
that was a nice surprise.
And when we left, they said, oh, we've got these wraps, and they're like these chickpea wraps. Would you take these with you? So it's a whole interesting part of our social dynamic that it has come a long way over 9.5 years.
Well, such a great story. Anybody else that has something to ask or offer? It's been a pretty amazing session so far.
I wanted to thank Scott because the last time we did this with you guys, I was just starting to do sushi rolls, and I was using sticky rice, which is white rice. And I was saying, boy, I have this crazy, glucose spike, and I love the sushi, but I have this crazy spike. I'm just going to have to stop eating. And Scott, well, just use brown rice because it has the fiber in it that you need. And so, believe it or not, you can make sushi with brown rice, and I don't have those spikes like I used to. Yeah. So thank you.
And we'll probably do sushi once a week, once every 2 weeks. He makes sushi, and we put the asparagus, mango, red cabbage, maybe some carrot strips or cucumber strips. What did I miss with the brown rice?
Avocado sometimes.
And avocado.
Yeah.
Rob Sherry, go ahead and unmute and fire away.
I have to say that this week I feel a great deal more optimistic. Last week I felt like a medical student that gets all the diseases they're studying. I went into this spiral of going, crap, I've got diabetes, or I'm coming up on it, or some damn thing. And it sort of was freaking me out during the week. And I got other crap going on too. So I thought, great, we're going to add diabetes to the mix. I don't think that way today. This is much more can do this time. So thank you for that. That was a great story.
Yeah. It is possible. And once you see the benefits, it even makes it simpler, because then you're like, oh, this is really working.
Yeah. How much counter space do you have in your RV?
Well, we have good coverage space. So our counter space where we cook, we have enough for a cutting board and a pressure cooker and a stovetop. Yep. So what we need.
Okay.
And a big little container that's full of fruits. So that's the other thing with diabetes, it was like no fruit, and now fruits are treat and dessert, apples and oranges and just
Grapefruit. He's not on any medication, so he doesn't have to worry about grapefruit. And we probably have in Mexico, we'll have a grapefruit every morning. And like if you're on a lot of medicines, you have to be careful about grapefruit. But I'm not on any medication at all. And except for our vitamin B12 that we take, and we take that just Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And even that, we were a little bit high when they tested it. They did test his. It's like maybe we just need it 2 days a week, but
take that orally or by action?
We-
Orally,
We take the one that dissolves.
under your tongue.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So do we have any other thoughts, comments, anything that anyone wants to share? We're doing pretty good so far. The hour and 20 minutes is pretty much flown by here from my point of view. Have you guys been invited to the podcast, PCRM, you know, Chuck, or to Chef AJ's session yet?
Not that one.
I follow Chuck on his podcast, so I just listen to him
Yeah.
once a week. He's
I
great.
think I'm gonna send him a note and say he needs to get in touch with you guys.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it would really make an interesting session and valuable for a lot of people who tune into them.
And people are intrigued because of our traveling and that we do this when we travel. But we would not have been courageous enough to begin traveling like we do without feeling very confident with the way we're eating and how it was affecting our health positively. And so that's what I attribute. Stu, you know, gave his, like he attributes it saved his life. And I know that our lifestyle, which we love so much, we would not have had courage enough for me to stop a good paying job at age 60 when we financially were not ready for us to retire. But we thought if we can live small and live in an RV, we can go and travel and see the world.
That's great. Someone's asking about the podcast. There's a podcast on PCRM. It's called the something room.
The Exam Room Podcast with Chuck
Exam
Carroll.
Yeah, if you go to pcrm.org, you can log on to what Scott just told you, the exam podcast,
Exam room.
exam room podcast.
The weight loss champion. So we didn't even talk about our weight loss. That was just kind of secondary to everything else that was happening, but we each lost 50, 60 pounds. It just that just happened. Not even thinking about that.
No extra exercise or anything.
No, just kind of doing what we were doing.
And
You
how
know,
long did it take for that weight to come off?
For me, it just took
6 months.
6 months to lose
This was quick.
probably 60 pounds. Sharon's took longer.
2 years. For me, 2 years, and then I had to think about it. I think, Charlie, I even talked to you about that. And you know, that 2 years was when we really went SOS free. And then, you know, still very gradual, but
Always,
I think
always losing, but
yeah, and I
just
think the
slower.
difference between male and female, like his weight loss was much quicker than mine. Mine, though, you know, was just a little bit every month over years. And that's fine.
Mhm.
That's great. Well, man, that was a wonderful session. Very inspiring, inspirational for me, and I hope for the rest of the group also. And it's really so good to see both of you doing so well. We're really grateful for you and happy.
Thank you.
We're very grateful for you.
Yeah.
Think about that a lot. And tell people if we tell them our origin story, we always attribute it to you, Dr. Ross. And I carry your card in my purse so that I can.
Well,
Like
I'll tell
spirit.
you, it's stories like yours that motivate Scott and myself to keep doing this week after week and week. And so thank you again, and for sharing with other people. Really appreciate that. Anybody, any other thoughts, Scott, for what's coming up next week and any other events or anything for the world to know?
Yeah, we just have the open forum next week, and then we got pretty fast approaching the first walk, Eugene Plant-Based Providers Community Walk that's on Saturday, the 18th of May. So next Tuesday is open forum, and then Saturday, May 18th, we have the Plant-Based Provider Walk. And that's all on the upcoming events on eugeneplantbasedproviders.com site. That's what's coming up in the immediate future.
Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, we're going to go ahead and end the meeting. I'm going to look around the gallery one more time to see if there is anybody else who has anything that they just are dying to share with the world of whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Today's session may have left a few of us a little speechless, and maybe next week at the open forum, we'll be able to answer some of your questions also as you think about what happened this week. So with that,
Thank you. Good
have a
night.
wonderful week.
Thanks,
Thank you
thanks
again.
everyone.
Bye-bye.